One of the basic principles in closing the distance is to not retreat while your opponent is attacking. This is exemplified here in the defense against the jab. Malapit will execute a simultaneous attack while he is defending. His opponent executes a left jab. Malapit parries the jab and with his right hand scoops the punch slightly outwards while leaning his body back. This lean not only helps move his body away from the jab, but also helps him thrust his hips forward to launch a right knee into his opponent's ribs. Again, notice the parry. Notice how his wrist turns and hooks his opponent's jab outwards. Notice how he leans back slightly. Notice how his lean helps him execute a knee strike. And notice how his left hand stays on guard at all times. In defending against the hook, Malapit will again execute a simultaneous attack while defending. His opponent executes a left hook. Malapit raises his hand to protect his chin and to block the left hook. His hand comes forward. This not only checks the distance of his opponent, but raises his left shoulder to protect his left chin. He leans back slightly and at the same time launches a right knee. Timing is the key to this attack. Again, Malapit does not retreat in stance. Notice how he raises his right hand close to his chin for protection. Notice how his left hand comes forward. Notice how his opponent's body is open for the right knee. Lastly, notice the angle of Malapit's knee. It does not come straight up, but instead in a diagonal angle. In defending against the uppercut, Malapit will pivot his body to the left. He uses his left hand to stop the upward direction of his opponent's punch. He places his right hand over his opponent's head and pulls his opponent's head downward into his right knee. Notice how he places his right hand over the back of his opponent's head. Notice how his left hand stops the uppercut directly and with his wrist slightly hooked. Notice how he blocks and pivots away at the same time, allowing his right knee to come directly to his opponent's head. In defending against the knee, Malapit will step towards his opponent at the same time. While his opponent executes a right knee, Malapit will step forward and lift a right knee at the same time, but instead use his inside shin to block his opponent's knee attack. Because his movement is shorter, he can time his shin to meet the thigh of his opponent's knee attack. Notice how he steps into the attack. Notice where his shin makes contact. Notice how his hands land directly inside his opponent's shoulder. This allows him to be ready to lock up his opponent for control or to execute another strike of his own. In defending against a low kick, Malapit wants to move in and counterattack as quickly as possible. As his opponent kicks, Malapit brings his lower leg backwards, only folding it at its knee. The block is against the outer tip of the shin, or his opponent may kick the top of his knee. Because he doesn't raise his thigh, he's able to quickly step forward again and quickly launch a right knee. Notice how little he steps back. Notice how his thigh is not raised. Notice how quickly he can step forward. Notice how he can use that forward momentum to launch a knee. And notice how his body leans back and his hands are still high and on guard. Defending against the mid-kick, Malapit will execute a cross-leg block with his right leg while trapping his opponent's leg with his left hand. As his opponent kicks, he raises his right shin and thwarts the kick. When his opponent is stopped, Malapit also brings his left hand down and scoops his opponent's leg, trapping it to further counterattack. Notice how high he raises his leg for the cross block. The knee must come high to defend against the kick. Notice how his left hand moves at the same time to grab his opponent's kick. Notice how his right hand is still on guard. And notice how close he is into his opponent's attack, and now he has closed the distance. In defending against the high kick, Malapet will keep his hands held high on his on-guard position. He lets the kick come towards his hands, and in this case, the opponent's right kick comes towards the left side of his head. He keeps his hands held high. He times his right hand to come underneath the kick and trap his opponent's leg between his left forearm and right hand. Notice how his right arm comes underneath, but not too low, just enough to come underneath the kick. Notice how the right hand is curved at the wrist to catch and trap the opponent's kick. Notice how he rotates his body ever so slightly to the left. Using a part of the combination before, a defending against a low kick, Malapet will show a series of moves that allows him to close the gap and gain control over his opponent. Malapet launches a left push kick. Notice how he takes a small step in with his right leg as he executes the left push kick. The push kick stops his opponent from moving in too close. His opponent low kicks, to which Malapet blocks by just folding his leg at the knee. He folds his left leg back and forward again as he steps in to execute a right knee. Now his right knee does not chamber back, but instead stays forward. As he lands, he puts his right hand on his opponent's neck. Now watch him pull and pivot his left leg back while pulling and gaining control of his opponent. Watch the pivot closely. By controlling his opponent, he keeps him off balance, stays away from the center line attack, and puts himself off angle, ready to strike. One of the principles in the clinch position is to control your opponent by keeping him off balance and staying out of his center line of attack. The key to keeping him off balance and maintaining control is to also put yourself in an offensive stance after you have controlled your opponent. In the clinch position, Malapet has his hands inside his opponent's arms. He stands evenly with his opponent. His hands are behind his neck. His elbows are slightly outward. He steps back slightly and then pulls his right foot back while pivoting his body. As he does so, his opponent is pulled down and forward. He twists his body slightly. Notice how high his hands are. They are slightly above the neck and on the back of his opponent's head. This allows him to pull his opponent's head forward. Notice as he pivots, his left elbow rises and his opponent's arm and shoulders are slightly pulled upwards as he pulls him to the right. As you can see after his pivot, his right leg is perfectly in position to execute a knee strike. In this offensive control of the neck, Malapet is in the inside position. Being in this position where both of his arms are inside his opponent gives him better control and leverage. As you can see, his hands are on the back of his opponent's head and not on the base of the neck. In one decisive move, he pulls his opponent's head down and forward while stepping back with his right foot. The step back gives him the momentum to bring his opponent's head down. Once in this position, he is in perfect position to execute a knee strike. The lower he pulls down, the closer he can knee his opponent's face. Notice how close his face is to his opponent and how his chin is still tucked in for protection. Again, notice the grab. It's on the back of his opponent's head, not at the base of the neck. From the inside position again, Malapet stands evenly with his opponent. In a quick step forward with his left leg, he positions his left knee inside his opponent's thigh. He pulls while raising his left elbow and raising his opponent off balance slightly. He pulled towards his right and pivots with his right leg backwards. The movement is quick and decisive,